Hey guys, welcome back to Zero to Hero. We're going to be playing some Battlefield Bad Company 2. Right now I've got the stats up to my last game that I played in the last episode. I did actually level up. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently. I'm going to be talking a little bit during the gameplay. So give it a chance and enjoy. Alright, so we are playing on Panama Canal. I'm not sure what these guys are doing, but spawned in on their squad. I've noticed with Bad Company 2 recently, ever since I started playing again, there's not much communication, so you're not going to hear much other than me bitching and moaning about poor play, or other game-related whining and moaning and crying like a little girl. So yeah, not too much with the in-game comms. I'm not really sure how I want to proceed with this style of video, but I think I'm going to use this time to kind of talk about some things going on in the world and, I don't know, just how they relate to video game culture. Stuff that you guys are a little bit more familiar with and stuff that I'm really interested in. Bear with me, and I'm going to try to put this stuff forth in the most concise and articulate way that I possibly can. So, I know this may be a little ambitious for my first video of this sort, but in light of recent events, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about violence. And, I mean, if you're watching the game right now, you know that video games are inherently violent. And they're based on play violence, animated violence. Not all games are based on violence, but games like this, they're a simulated representation of something that in real life is actually pretty scary and something that one would hope we don't have to deal with on a regular basis. I think it's important to be really careful about how you talk about video games. Our initial reaction, I think, as gamers, people who play games, people who do this all the time, is to be really defensive about the simulated violence that goes on in video games. You know, the mantra is, well, these are just animations, and video games don't kill anyone, and there's no real harm being done by a game. If you're too young to understand the difference between video game violence and real life violence, you shouldn't be playing it to begin with. And if you're too screwed up to understand the difference as an adult, then, you know, you're screwed up, and the video games aren't going to be the thing to push you over the edge. But I think we have to be careful as the gaming community in how we represent those facts and how we take on the issue of real life violence. You know, at one point I was listening to a podcast on IGN right around the time of the Newtown shootings, and you know, Joe Biden was calling in all the video game execs to talk about video game violence and how that affects, you know, our young people. The initial reaction from the community was, well, we don't have anything to do with real guns, we don't sell a dangerous product, we don't want anything to do with that. But I think that response kind of lacks a basic humanity, and I'm glad in the end that there were representatives from the gaming industry to talk about it, even though they got slammed and they really were made to look terrible. But I think it's a conversation that we have to have, because, you know, we are all human beings and violence is a problem and it needs to be discussed. I think that another problem that we have in general is just violence in society. And I know that most gamers don't really want to think about it, but as a whole, we live in a violent world. We live in a world that, you know, we're constantly bombarded by violent imagery in the media, both video games, Hollywood, and real life. And there are horrible things that happen every day. I think as a responsible community and responsible human beings, sometimes you have to question your source of entertainment. When life is so ugly, why choose ugliness as a source of entertainment? Now, don't get me wrong, I've been playing video games since I was a young child. But I think that it begs the question, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we letting our kids do? I mean, how does simulated violence shape the future that we are creating for ourselves and our children? Like, I would never want to see video games regulated in any way like that. I like the fact that there are ratings on them and children aren't supposed to get access to violent games and all that. But there is a bigger picture question here. How does media, not just video games, Hollywood and the news media and all the other, violent and horrible imagery that we get on a regular basis, how does that shape our society? How does that affect us as human beings? And I think that it's a really important thing, and it would be irresponsible of us not to ask. The scary part for me is when I think about that, I think it's more of a human condition, and I think that throughout our history, violence has not only been entertainment, but it's been at the forefront of our way of life as humans. I see Hollywood entertainment, blockbuster films, video games, that style of entertainment as, our evolution. We're moving away from actual violence, and I would hope that that would be commended. Another thing that I feel like I have to touch on as a Massachusetts native and somebody who watched the events unfold over the last week live on TV is those who wish to do us harm and how real that violence is. I think that we tend to be a little spoiled here in the United States. I don't want to diminish the tragedy that occurred, but we don't see as much of that variety of violence as pretty much the rest of the planet. We're lucky in that respect, and I think that when it comes to questions of violence in society, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of society do we want to be? And this is not just a question of violent video games or movies or news media. It's really an identity question for people as a whole. I know I personally would much rather be known as the generation that could goof around and play games and be peaceful than the generation that has, fought 2 wars on foreign soil. I don't want to get too political because this is really more a discussion about our overall psyche and the impact of media on our society. But there are some problems with the way that we all view ourselves, and there are some problems with our identity as a whole. And by our, I mean human identity. Anyways, food for thought. I edited down a lot of this gameplay, so I think I'm going to leave you guys with the gameplay and another loss, because I am truly terrible at video games. Anyways, I hope this video will give you guys something to chew on a little bit. Just my thoughts. I hope that you might come away from it thinking about how you might be able to impact your surroundings for the better and leave this world on a happy note. Anyways, I'd also like to send my thoughts and prayers to the families and the victims of the Boston bombing recently, as well as thank the first responders who did an amazing job watching live on TV, watching those guys run towards a very scary event like that and put themselves in danger is truly an amazing thing. Overall, guys, we're pretty lucky here in the United States, so let's make it a peaceful and happy place to be. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This video in particular, I would love to hear some discussion from you guys about what you think about violence and how it relates to the media and video games. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.